Dalvin Tomlinson got an extension of his void year deadline anyway. And at the very least, it indicates that the Vikings and Tomlinson at least still have some level of interest in each other, and possibly getting Dalvin Tomlinson back on this team isn't as completely out the door as we thought. On Tuesday, Dalvin Tomlinson's contract voided. In 2021, he signed a 2-year, $21 million deal with a $12.5 million signing bonus. But the Vikings put 3 void years on his contract, which means that the proration of his signing bonus, instead of being spread out over 2 years, was actually spread out over 5. Hence why Dalvin Tomlinson's cap numbers were only $6 million in year 1 and $7.5 million in year 2. Now, what does this all mean? Well, anytime a player has void years on his contract, if they are not re-signed by a certain date, whatever the remaining balance is, regardless of how many void years there were, comes due on that current year's salary cap. In this case, $7.5 million. Apparently, the Vikings and Dalvin Tomlinson weren't quite done with each other. According to Field Yates, the Vikings and Tomlinson reached an agreement where they would extend the void deadline to March 15th. In exchange, the Vikings gave up the ability to franchise tag Dalvin Tomlinson. Had they not made this deal, and let's say they signed him to a 1-year, $10 million contract, $17.5 million is what his cap hit would have been. $10 million on the new contract plus the $7.5 of the void years. Now, because they have extended this void year deadline, they still have the opportunity to re-sign Dalvin Tomlinson and roll in those void year dead money cap hits into the new contract. Sort of like when you refinance your mortgage and you have closing costs. They just tack that on to the new mortgage. But I digress. The point is this. If the Vikings do now re-sign Dalvin Tomlinson, only $2.5 million of that dead money will count against this year's cap, with the remaining $5 million being spread out over the next couple of seasons. Now, I won't get into all the machinations of, well, what if Dalvin Tomlinson signed for a 1-year contract, a 3-year contract, whatever. The bottom line is that the Vikings now have an additional couple of weeks to make a decision on him, because now if they sign him, they are going to be paying $5 million less in cap space overall. So if he does sign a $10 million contract for 1 year, it's going to cost him $12.5 million. Now the question becomes, should the Vikings do that? Well, they're going to be paying $7.5 million for him regardless. So if you could get him for a decent contract, it is a case where sometimes chasing good money after bad isn't the worst thing in the world. There are such things in life and in business as sunk costs, but if you can roll some of those sunk costs into a player that can still be productive for you, it is actually worth doing. Now, Dalvin Tomlin benefits from this because, as I said, he can no longer be franchise tagged. The Vikings benefit from that because up until this deal was made, Dalvin Tomlinson was a free agent, free to talk to any one of the 32 teams in the NFL. Leads me to believe that there's mutual interest there. Prior to this deal being announced by Field Yates, I would say that Dalvin Tomlinson returning was next to nothing. That would have cost the Vikings way too much money against the salary cap. Now I'm going to say it's better than 50-50. I'm not saying it's a for sure done deal. Why would Dalvin Tomlinson and the Vikings go through this motion if they didn't have mutual interest in getting a deal done? Now, as far as should they? Well, let's take a look at what the Vikings did last year with Dalvin Tomlinson in and outside of the lineup. For the first half of the season, when he, Za'Darius Smith, and Danielle Hunter were all healthy, Vikings defensive line was okay. It wasn't Purple People Eaters or circa 1987 where you had 4 guys with multiple double-digit sacks, but they were a solid defensive line. Once Za'Darius Smith got hurt and once Dalvin Tomlinson was out of the lineup, we were all crying for Ed Donatel to start blitzing because we got no pressure whatsoever. He is better fit for the 4-3 than the 3-4, but as Flores said in his press conference, ask me who we're playing and then I'll determine what kind of defense I'm running. Dalvin Tomlinson is a solid defensive tackle. No, he's not a home wrecker like John Randall or Warren Sapp from back in the days or the Lawrence guy that ate Garrett Bradbury's lunch. He's a solid player, solid leader. And at the end of the day, I think Flores isn't going to want to go completely nuclear on blowing up last year's defense. And Dalvin Tomlinson is a guy that would fit the mold for this team. So I anticipate that the Vikings are probably going to get a deal done, but it's all going to depend on how much money he can get. Now, with the combine looming right around the corner and agents and GMs being down there scouting college players, and of course, agents are only going to be talking about their college players. They're certainly not going to be talking about the existing players in the NFL. Yeah, okay. Dalvin Tomlinson's agent will be able to gauge from other teams, hey, how much would my player be able to procure from you? The Vikings be able to take a look at some other players, and after the combine is over, the Vikings and Dalvin Tomlinson will be able to still negotiate because he is one of their free agents. So there's no tampering involved from that standpoint. So I anticipate if the price can be made to where everybody is happy, that Dalvin Tomlinson will probably be re-signed by the Vikings, but we'll just have to wait and see. In other news, wide receiver Robert Woods, who played with Kevin O'Connell with the Los Angeles Rams the year they won the Super Bowl, was released by the Tennessee Titans in a salary cap saving move. So Vikings fans are all on Twitter about, hey, Could he play the role of Robin to Justin Jefferson like he did to Cooper Kupp during their Super Bowl run? He's coming off an ACL tear last year, which is part of the reason why he had a mediocre season at best. And I've been on the train of let's not be beholden to older players with bloated contracts. So if the Vikings do decide to move on from Adam Thielen, if they can't work out a renegotiation or a salary cut, we want to replace him with another older wide receiver who's only a year younger. I don't know. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying I hate the idea. Yes, he is familiar with the Kevin O'Connell system, but Kirk Cousins is a little more familiar with Adam Thielen than he is Robert Woods, to say the least. Yeah, if you end up cutting Adam Thielen, then you end up signing Woods for, say, not necessarily a veteran minimum contract, but let's just say a 1-year prove-it deal where it's a couple, $2-3 million, and you ultimately end up saving some money against the cap, I guess. But I'm not jumping up and down for it. Again, guy's coming off an ACL tear, and I'm not saying that, his career is over, but I'm going to look elsewhere if we're going to try and find the Robin to JJ's Batman. Thank you kindly for joining me. Check out the video that we did here talking about all the different free agents that the Vikings may or may not bring back, as well as the older veterans that may or may not need to go. For now, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you kindly. Skol to the next episode.